Hi folks, I'm Cynthia Dearin and welcome to Business Beyond Borders, where I unlock the secrets of international business success. Now today, I'm chatting to my colleague Gary Garner, who is a senior advisor for China with Dearin Associates, and we are talking about geopolitics, China, and specifically what's going on in Hong Kong at the moment. Gary, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Cynthia. Glad to be here.
How important is geopolitics when companies are thinking about trading internationally?
Well, geopolitics really is background noise for most companies. It's there going on as we progress in our business. But it's only when issues start rising, like the Arab Spring, for example, and the current issues in Hong Kong, that you have to sit back and think about, well, what does this mean for me and my business, if you're already there, or my prospective business in these areas? So on the whole, it's background noise to our lives, but there are moments in history and time when it takes a front seat.
And when we look at geopolitics, you can have a lot of things happening, can't you? But not all of them are going to be relevant to your business. And so there's a real job to be done there in terms of looking at what's going on in the geopolitical environment and then working out which of the things that happen are going to be relevant to me and my business as I start to trade internationally or as I continue to do what I'm doing overseas.
Yeah, well, I mean, geopolitical change can be a good thing. It may actually open up opportunities. I mean, again, going back to the Middle East, where there are issues arising in the last 10 years with public uprising, now there are opportunities to enter the market. So in fact, a long-term view may be that it may provide new opportunities for business. Now, it really does depend on the circumstances of your business situation. It depends on your own personal appetite for risk, and then obviously the economic risks attached to the geopolitical outcome. So what has to be done is really a careful analysis of the events to see how it affects your business.
Mm. What are some of the most important factors that you think businesses should consider? I mean, do we need to take into account the result of an election? Do we need to take into account policies around certain industries? Which of the things that tend to happen on the geopolitical stage are the things that might actually have an impact on us?
I think they're the things that affect the ability to run the business the way you want to run it and to run it profitably. If you take, for example, the UK with Brexit, if you take the situation where you could have quite a strong left-wing government in place that has a nationalisation policy, that could affect the way you go into that market. Similarly, in Hong Kong, where it has been a free and open economy, a great base for Asia, is that going to continue? Now, riots and public upheaval occurs quite regularly in the world. A riot does not prevent you from investing in that market. The problem with China is now that you've got this conflict between the Communist Party's view of the world and how it runs the mainland China, and that historical, more open, liberal-minded state that is Hong Kong. And the interesting thing is that there's a social contract between the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese people that doesn't really apply to the Hong Kong people, who have an idea of what a more liberal economy and society is. And although they've never had what you might call direct democracy, even under British rule, under the British system, there was rule of law, there was free press, and there was that fundamental right that all colonials had of going back to the Privy Council in London as a point of appeal.
Yes.
So the system worked in an open manner, but none of these things exist in China.
Yeah.
And of course, the discussion about the extradition arrangements is fundamental to that whole setup.
Yeah.
And this is really what has got people moving. Now, the question is, what can be done about this? And China is sovereign. It has the right to do as it will with its territory.
Yeah.
But the implications of any sort of Tiananmen type intrusion could be quite significant, not only for the people involved, obviously, but as the stability of Hong Kong as a business centre, it could be seriously affected by this.
And in the short term, we've already seen the impacts that the civil unrest, if you can put it that way, have caused. Tourist numbers are down by about half at what should be a peak season of the year. Property prices have taken a very significant hit in somewhere that's traditionally been one of the most expensive places for real estate in the world. Do you think that's likely to continue?
Well, it might do. You might even argue that there's a need for a bit of an adjustment, certainly in the property arena. And underpinning some of the demonstration is the ability of young people, to get into the housing ladder. Similar issues in Australia and elsewhere in the world, but it's quite profound there. I was talking to a colleague yesterday who mentioned that he's involved with jewellery, that the jewellery business is down by about 30-40%.
Wow.
So clearly it's affecting business. And what is interesting is that despite that, the population at large is supporting these demonstrations. The fact that you have peaceful demonstrations of 1 million odd people is telling you something.
Yeah.
Now, this would worry the Chinese authorities because the last thing they want is that to infect the wider community.
Do you think that we've seen a few developments recently? So, one is this argument about right to extradite people back to China. We've also seen the opening of the Hong Kong mainland bridge last year. As we see these developments, do you get the feeling that Hong Kong's independence is being challenged in a serious way or eroded over time?
It's certainly being eroded over time, and I think in recent, in the last decade, it has happened increasingly. And it all fits in with Xi's approach towards law and order within China and how the province of Hong Kong is treated. It also extends to the way they intend to deal with the rest of the world.
Yeah.
You do on Chinese terms or not at all.
Yeah.
And that in itself has an implication for a place like Australia that sells around 60% of its exports to China. How free are we from the influence of Chinese authority? So what it demonstrates is a way of working which in fact could put other countries like Australia, Pacific Islands, elsewhere on the back foot in terms of how they feel about dealing with this great dragon to the north of us, and how do we manage our independence in a way. So it gets quite complicated in terms of the implications of all this.
Do you think there are some practical ones that jump out at you in the short term?
Well, I think the fact that the liaison office in Hong Kong has been talking to not only Cathay Pacific, that we've all heard about, but to some of the big four accounting firms, other big organisations in Hong Kong to warn them off about allowing their staff to demonstrate is an interesting insight to how the mindset of the Chinese Communist Party is working. So whilst it's been benign for the last 30 years, they've grown on the back of Western support, I guess, in terms of manufacturing. We're getting to a stage now where quite naturally, in terms of the historical cycle of a country getting as powerful as China, it's beginning to stretch its muscles a bit and say, we want to do this, that and the other. That is where the unknown is. In terms of practical business in Hong Kong, well, I think I wouldn't be pulling out now, because I think there's a reasonable chance that things might well be calmed down once the students go back to universities and school. That may not, if that doesn't happen in September, October, and we're continuing to see peaceful demonstrations or even mini riots going on, I think that increases the chance of Chinese intervention and therefore makes the market a difficult one to think about, to enter, if you're not there already.
Yeah. So if you had to give 3 top tips for companies that are thinking about going to Hong Kong at the moment, maybe they're not there yet, what would you advise them to do?
I'll tell them to continue to do your research and go forward, because the fundamental business issues are probably still sound. It's only if you see, if the troops march in, then that may well change your perspective. I think at the moment, both sides want to have a peaceful outcome to this, or at least one that does not involve killing people. It's alarming that today we saw Hong Kong police join their arms against the protesters yesterday. I think watch the geopolitical situation and look at what's happening, and basically I would carry on doing what you're doing really until you see some action that is adverse to Hong Kong coming from the Chinese side. It is, to my mind, less likely in some respects that they will intervene, because although the new road that connects with Shenzhen is a very fast one, if you've lived in Hong Kong, you know that the back streets are somewhat difficult to manoeuvre around. It would not be an easy thing to quell that rioting. I think it would actually create more popular upheaval. There's a threat of violence, obviously. But I think the Chinese will think very carefully before doing that. And they will probably put more emphasis on the Hong Kong police itself to quell things.
So for now, watching brief?
A watching brief, certainly, yes.
Gary, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
If you're enjoying the Business Beyond Borders podcast and you're thinking about expanding your company internationally, check out the Dearin & Associates website, dearinassociates.com. Our consulting services, which include market research and modelling, cross-cultural consulting, and strategic business connections, deliver deep insights and create value for larger companies looking to scale internationally. If you're from a smaller organisation that wants to expand its global footprint, take a look at our International Business Accelerator program, which my team and I created to help micro to medium-sized businesses to speed up and de-risk the process of going global. The program helps business owners to build a great strategy without having to reinvent the wheel. It creates the momentum to put the strategy into play, and it helps them to generate or raise the funds that they need to get an international expansion off the ground. We built it especially for founders and CEOs who want to take their business to the next level and wondering where to start. It's structured in a way that's simple to follow. It's digital so that you can take part from anywhere in the world. It's a lot of fun and our members love it. Check it out at dearinassociates.com.